Hey everyone, Joe Martin here with Real Men Connect, where we help good men become godly men by connecting them to godly husbands, godly fathers, and godly leaders. Guys, I'm doing my Real Men ride along today, and I thought I'd share a quick lesson that I think could probably help a lot of men out there who may be listening to this. My wife and I just recently saw a movie. It was yesterday. We saw a movie called Whiplash. If you haven't seen it, great movie. Excuse the language you're going to probably hear in it, but a great movie with a great lesson in it. Well, to kind of summarize the movie for you, the movie is about a young guy, a young kid about freshman age in college, who wants to be a great musician. In fact, he wants to be a great drummer. And he runs into this professor, this instructor. I can kind of relate from being a professor, but he runs into this professor who is very, very tough, and that is an understatement. It's probably one of the toughest teachers I've ever seen, or toughest coaches I've ever seen on a student. But this guy did a lot of mental games and manipulation, and giving this kid a lot of derogatory comments, putting him down. Just hard to please. I mean, almost impossible to please. Well, this guy, and I don't want to ruin the movie for you, but he pushes this guy past his limits, and the kid ended up failing. Okay? But you have to watch the rest of the movie to see what I'm talking about. But they ended up meeting again some time after this kid had failed, and he was explaining to him why he was the kind of teacher that he was. And he explained to this teacher, the teacher explained to the student that the reason why he was this way is because he was trying to push his students past their comfort zone so they can exceed their own limiting expectations. In other words, that he believed that we as individuals do not live up to our potential because we don't push ourselves past our preconceived limits, our own low expectations. And so he was saying that if it wasn't for people like him pushing people past their low expectations, that we would not have some of the famous musicians that we have today. And he happened to mention a particular guy named Charlie Parker, who was a wonderful musician. And so he said there will be no Charlie Parkers if they weren't challenged and pushed past their self-imposed limits. Well, the young man asked a very profound question that I thought was very, very good for his age, and I thought it was an excellent question. And the question he asked me says, but doesn't it come to a point where you can push somebody past their limits? He says, to the point that they get discouraged, that they never become as famous as a Charlie Parker because they got discouraged and they quit. Now that sounds like a great question. But the teacher's response was even more interesting. The teacher's response was, well, I understand what you're saying, that you're saying they can be pushed past their limits and get discouraged. He said, but the great ones never get discouraged. Wow. Let that sink in for just a second. He says that if the person is destined for greatness, nothing will discourage them. So in other words, he's saying if they do break, what he's insinuating, that if they do break, they were never meant to be great. Now, I thought that made a lot of sense until I talked to my wife about it afterwards. And this is the reason why I'm shooting this quick video for you, because I think this is a lesson that we can learn as men, especially as fathers and as husbands. Because I'm a pretty tough father, I think. I push my kids, my son and my daughter, try to push them to their maximum point of potential. But I asked my wife, I told her, I said, well, he's right. I said, however, but at what cost? And so the question is, when do you push a person to that point that, yes, you break them past their barriers, but you also break their spirit? And I think we as fathers and as husbands need to know that it's all right to push our kids. It's all right to have high expectations for them and to not let them settle for mediocrity or to settle for less. But we can't do it at the risk of risking the relationship. So we have to strike a good balance between pushing hard but loving even harder. And so I know with my own children that when I'm disciplining them, and sometimes it breaks my heart because I have to be so hard on them. But I also pray before I discipline my kids, and I tell them that I'm praying because I want to teach them a lesson, and I want them to be the best that they can be, that God wants them to be. But God, please don't allow me to break their spirit. And so I'm challenging you as men, real men, that seek God as you discipline your kids, because we're not just there to discipline, but to also disciple our children. and you want to push them, but don't push them past the breaking point that you break the relationship, and more importantly, that you break their spirit. Because we do represent Christ and we represent God to our children. We're the first example of the Godhead that they see. So that's the Real Men lesson for today, and hope that it benefits you. And until next time, remember, as always on Real Men Connect, that we are males by birth, but we are men by choice. Stay in the script.